Hello and welcome. Let's see, we have a couple more that have joined. We are just about to get started. Actually, I told myself 5 after the hour. It is 12:05, 2:05 Central. I'm joining from California. So we are going to dive right in. Thanks so much for being here. For those of you that just logged on, please take a moment, open up the chat, tell us your name and where you're from. We're so happy to have you joining us today. My name is Candice Gliatto, and I am going to be your guide today as we work through our first strategy series webinar of the year. We're going to be doing one of these every single season. And so we're kicking it off here on February, what is today? February 2nd. Finally, January has come to a close, so that was a long month. And I am going to be sharing with you a little bit of something different. Um, Something that came up for me in November around working my front desk. So, a little intro to me. So, I am the Director of Education and Coaching for Qnity. I am also a salon owner. My salon is called Citrus Salon. I have two locations, one in the Bay Area in a town called Martinez, and then the other is in the Portland, Oregon area in Lake Oswego, Oregon. So I had a very, very insightful and kind of terrifying experience recently. So, as happens, my front desk team called out. I typically have one person in the salon at the front desk, another person at home answering the phone, and just in the beginning of November, as we were kicking off a busy holiday season, I had an interesting experience where I decided, you know what? I'll work the front desk. Can't be that hard. Let's do this. And today I'm going to share with you the insights and the solutions that came from having that experience because it was a doozy. So let me take you back to that day. It was, first week in November. We had just kicked off all of our holiday initiatives, and I decide I'm going to cover the front desk. Funny enough, on this day, our person who answers the phone also was out on vacation, and so my GM actually she took the phones and I took the floor. And it was interesting because my perspective, like what I assumed would happen, was that I was just going to be the best front desk person that ever graced the floor of Citrus Salon. I was going to keep the team motivated and happy and taken care of all day. I was going to sell a ton of retail. I was going to, tell everybody about all the promos and all the things that were happening. And what ended up happening is by the time I got to the end of the day, I didn't even know how I got there because it was chaotic. Now, first thing I did was text everybody who works my front desk and say, hey, I just want to let you know I spent a day in your shoes and it's not easy. The other thing that I had to do was make some changes because that was the first time that I had stepped behind my front desk in about 8 years. And a lot of things have changed, not only in my business, but also with my team's expectations of how they need to be supported throughout the day, with what our clients are looking for in a salon experience, and with the tools and the resources that are available to us. So I realized that I was kind of maybe not operating as efficiently or effectively as I wanted to. And so I want everybody that's here listening to just take a moment and think about your front desk. Okay, now your front desk is going to be a part of your, an essential piece of your salon or spa operations. And I want you to rate your front desk performance. Now, this isn't about the individual that's working the front desk, okay? Just the systems and the structures and the procedures that you have in place to make that front desk as efficient and effective as possible. I want you to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 and put it in the chat. So a 1 would mean your front desk is terrible, it's not functioning in the way that it should. A 10 would be your front desk is absolutely crushing it. They're fantastic, keeping that day running nice and smooth, really driving revenue throughout the day, all of that. Okay, Sherry says a 7. That's great. Anybody else that can chime in with where they assess themselves on that scale from 1 to 10, that would be great. So let's back up a little bit while you're all putting you're putting your front desk rating in there. And let's talk about a Qnity methodology that we refer to often that is called the 5 functions. So the 5 functions are the key areas in which key activity in our salons and spas live. If we were to bucket all the things that have to happen to drive a successful business into 5 categories, this is what they would be. It would be marketing, which is how we promote and really make our promise to the world about what our salon or spa does. Education, which is all the training that's needed for success in the role. We have our people function, which is all about taking care of our team and making sure that they're set up for success and that we are doing all the right things as employers to keep them engaged and taken care of. Then I'm going to skip over to finance, is really how we manage the money that flows in and out of our salon. Our front desk lives here in operations. Now, I chose to put this slide up today because it's kind of interesting. I think a lot of the gaps that I'm going to share with you that I identified in my own front desk really came from not having as much clarity around how robust my operations function really needed to be to set my team up and ultimately my business up for success. So when you think about your front desk is essentially supporting the operations of your business. They are the ones that are executing the procedures that you have in place to make sure that you have a smooth day. So there's another, as I was assessing what was happening, when I was working that chaotic day behind the desk, and don't worry, I'm going to tell you all the things that happened, and some of them will make you laugh, and some of them you'll be like, what, really? And some of them maybe are things that are showing up for you. But as I was working that day, I had a notebook with me and I just wrote down everything that was an opportunity. And it was a long list. It came from, oh, I need a new label on our hot tea dispenser, all the way to we have to completely reinvent the wheel on this system. But if I were to bucket them in some broad categories, here's what showed up. One, I realized that some of our protocols or policies were unclear and maybe not really even effective at all. Perhaps they were just making people's wheels spin. The other thing that I realized is that there was some unnecessary complexity. The process of checking in and out was a little bit over curated to the point where it couldn't really be executed smoothly. The other thing that I realized is that by the end of that day, I had been ran ragged. And I know all the ins and outs of that business, but I realized that maybe I wasn't staffing quite the way that I needed to staff to support that salon floor. And one of the biggest things that I identified was that there was a lot of missed opportunities. There's a lot of ways that we could have set our team up to do things differently so that we could have a more successful day and ultimately drive greater sales. So let's think about, I want to introduce to you one of our foundational principles at Qnity. These are called our success principles. Now, these are 5 ways that we can set ourselves up for success and be the most effective. And I want you to consider how these are showing up in your business, specifically in your operations function around your front desk. Because what we know is that when all of these principles are active and in place, we are going to be more effective. So I'm going to walk you through what these 5 principles are, and then I'm going to share with you how I was able to apply these principles to my front desk operations to drive different results. The first principle is simple. We've got to make things simple, otherwise we cause unnecessary chaos for ourselves, and in my case, I was causing unnecessary chaos for my team members. Now, simplicity is sometimes looked at like a little bit too passively, right? We think, oh, simple, that's easy, just put less on my plate. No, Simplicity actually takes a lot of work and intention, and there's a process to it. And the process is two steps. Identify what is absolutely essential and eliminate the rest. And so that day, as I was working my front desk, I found a lot of opportunities to eliminate things that were not essential to the success of my salon floor. So I want you to think about that when you think about how your desk is showing up every day too. The next principle is visual. So we are visual learners, we're visual creatures. Where is there opportunity for us to lean on visuals to strengthen our operations? I'll share with you what the visual piece looked like for me, and you'll probably get a good laugh out of it. Then we have small steps. So this is, really what it comes down to is sometimes we have this big broad idea or these big pictures of what we want to do, and it feels like moving a mountain. And if we can break a process or a goal down into small steps that are achievable, we can take that first step. And with each step, we gain momentum and then we start to see results. The next principle is structure. Now I'm curious, and go ahead and open up your chat because I want to hear what you've got to say about this one. Let me know, how do you feel about structure? Do we like it? Or does it cause us some angst? Because this is one that we can be a little bit divided on as an industry. Some people crave structure and some people really resist it. It feels like putting something in a box or a diet. Now, the type of structure that we're talking about in these success principles is structure that creates freedom. And if your structure is, sure, you said necessity, I absolutely agree. Something that can happen that we want to be mindful of is we can create structures that smother our business. And so we have to be mindful that we pay attention to both of those success principles, structure and simplicity, so that we can set ourselves up with good systems that do what we need them to do. The last success principle is doing. And what I mean by that is going from knowing what you need to do to doing what you need to do. One of the things that we lean on here at Qnity to be able to go from knowing to doing is our tools. So how does this show up in the front desk? Well, I'll share with you. So let's start looking at some of those gaps, starting with unclear protocols. Okay. Now, admittedly, I love creating structures and systems. It's fun, it's satisfying. I'm one of those girls that likes to create a spreadsheet or a step-by-step process. But something that showed up for me, and this is why I the challenge, by the way, at the end of this, I'm going to say it now and I'll say it again when we wrap up today, is to really consider spending a day behind your front desk and seeing what you learn. Try the same method I did. Take out a notebook and start writing down the opportunities that you see. One of the first things that showed up for me was unclear protocols. Now, I make the protocols and they still felt unclear. How is that possible? Well, a bad system is going to beat a good person every time. I love this quote because I'm just going to be real transparent here. Some of my systems were a bit out of touch with what was actually happening on the salon floor. My GM and I created them with all the best intentions in mind, but that said, not being the person that executes them day in, day out, didn't give us the opportunity to flush out some of the flaws in them. And so that day, with Ashley answering the phone and myself working on the salon floor, we realized that there were some pretty significant gaps. The most prominent was in simply knowing what our systems and policies were. This is just a screen grab of our salon SOP, our standard operating procedure. And as you can see, there is a process for everything. We have spent hours putting all of this together. Well, guess what? Out of sight, out of mind. Because even though this is how our salon SOP shows up on our computers, this is how it showed up in use. Our front desk computers were starting to look pretty close to what you see on the screen here. And what happened was it just became kind of like a Band-Aid over a Band-Aid over a Band-Aid, do this, do that. And it just turned into one big unclear mess. So the solution was to get this cleaned up. How can I make sure that those that are working at the front desk have the answers to all the common questions that come up right there front and center without having a post-it party here? Oh, and if anybody's front desk looks like this, just let me know because it would make me feel a little bit less alone in that one because, yeah, I'm a post-it queen. Anyways, so what we developed was something that we call our resource log. Now, we did do this using Google Sheets, but what we've done is we've got all of our policies and procedures all in one place. So all we have to do is click on the link. This is now saved on our front desk computer. We click on the link. We've got scripts. We've got policies, we've got common issues, troubleshooting, everything like that right there at our fingertips. When I presented this to my front desk team, their minds were blown. They were so excited, and we've been way more efficient ever since. One of the policies that was really challenging for us was our cancellation policy. I'll share with you what it was. We have, if somebody cancels within 24 hours of their appointment, we would charge them a 50% cancellation fee, 50% of their service price. Well, we do make some exceptions, right? Because emergencies happen. So if somebody was sick, well, we didn't want to encourage them to come in sick and get our stylist sick, so we would forgive that. If somebody had what we would deem as an emergency, we would let them slide. But here's the thing. It's such a gray area. Some will take advantage, some have real emergencies that are showing up. And so what it did was it put our front desk team in a position where they had to make a hard call every time. It caused confusion, it caused stress, it was nuanced, it wasn't flexible, it was super hard to enforce because we had a lot of pushback, and it really wasn't client-centric. And if you're watching the trends right now, client-centric is everything. So what we've switched it to now is, okay, we're going to offer forgiveness one time per 12 months. And if they're a repeat offender, regardless of reason, we're going to make that charge. So we created scripts for our team for how, when somebody cancels, to politely say, oh, thanks so much for letting us know you won't make it. We do allow one cancellation per year, and so just keep that in mind for next time. We hope you feel better. Now it's clear, the team feels confident in delivering it. Now I'm not saying take my cancellation policy. Do whatever you want with your cancellation policy. But I am saying think about where there might be too much nuance in it and how that might be impacting your team's ability to enforce it. Just one example. So now it's clear, it's reasonable, it's easy to enforce, and it's client-centric. Now, the next thing that showed up was this kind of unnecessary complexity. Essentially, Ashley and I were making all the rules and deciding all of these fun promos that we were going to do, or these little interactive activities for our clients to engage in at checkout. And what we realized is that it was creating more noise and more friction in our check-in and checkout process, and ultimately not leading to the results that we wanted to. So I'll tell you a funny story about this one, and this is where you might get a laugh out of this. One of our best practices is we have like a points system, okay? And we have different things that you can do to earn points every single month. Now, this being the holiday season, we decided it would be a great idea that if somebody who was in the salon found our elf on the shelf, that they could have some extra points. Maybe I've taken a page out of the Trader Joe's playbook, but we thought it would be brilliant. But here's the thing, I never tried it. So here I am on the salon floor explaining to somebody about how they can earn points at our salon. And I find myself face to face with a grown woman and saying to her, did you find our elf? I'm sorry, I just always laugh about it. Because she looked at me and she said, no. And I said, well, you can earn some points if you find the elf. And in that moment, I thought, I don't know if this is really aligned with our our brand here, but I'm just sticking to it because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to be the example. Anyways, turns out the elf was in the back. She was all the way at the front. I ended up saying, it's in the back here. Let me just give you the points. My point is not don't do an elf promo. My point is think about where the juice is really worth the squeeze. And maybe in that point, it wasn't. And so when we try on our ideas first, we might be able to flush out some gaps in them. The other thing I had going was another holiday promo that created a lot of running around, decorating the tree and undecorating the tree, where people were choosing prizes. It was such a great idea in theory, but I spent so much time running around decorating this tree that all of the essentials, right? We go back to simplicity, identify the essential, eliminate the rest. The essentials started to fall through the cracks. So here is your call to action. Do an audit. What type of complexities are showing up that are kind of taking away from the focus of the things that are essential? Because as you see, and as you know, if you've worked your front desk, there's a lot of things that are showing up in that one in that one brief interaction. We're checking in, we're checking out. Some of us have intake forms. We need to get the stylist. We want to get robes going. If you have a new guest promo, there are so many things that need to happen in that short period of time. Do an audit, identify what's essential, and eliminate the rest so that people can put their full focus on the things that matter most. Now, the check-in process for us was overly complex. There were several steps that we had all the best intentions in mind when we put in place, but what we realized is that our team didn't really understand what needed to happen. And so when we looked and said, what is essential here? Well, it was three things: greet, seat, and treat. Say hello, show them to a seat, get them a beverage while they wait for their service provider. Those were the things that were most important. And if our team could spend their time focusing on doing a really thoughtful and engaging job with those three things, they were going to elevate the experience more than all the bells and whistles that I had come up with. That, again, best intentions, but what it really comes down to is doing a great job at these three things. For checkout, there was a lot of expectations. But what it really comes down to is what we now call the 4 Ps, which is pre-book, products, points, and payment. If those things are all done and they're done thoughtfully with an engaging conversation around it where you're not distracted by a bunch of noise and other things happening, then the client is going to have a good experience. So consider what is essential and what can be eliminated as it relates to your check-in and check-out process. Now, the next opportunity that I identified was really around staffing. And so something to consider is really what is the need of your salon floor? So, and how has your business changed? So in the past, I had a different team. I had several full-time heavy hitter stylists. They generated a ton of sales per week, and they were also pretty self-sufficient, okay? And so my rule of thumb was one desk per shift. What I didn't realize is that my salon chairs were not as full as they are now, and I did not adjust my staffing. So now things are a little bit different. I've got 16 stylists, and the reason why this snuck up on me is because my revenue didn't double, right? So I thought, oh, there's no need to change anything. Well, that's because I don't have those heavy hitters quite as many of those heavy hitters as I used to. I've got kind of a newer team after, some turnover over the last 5 years. They need more support, and there's a lot of them, and I'm lucky to have them, but they needed more support. So my one desk person, I put this little flame on there because that was me that day trying to take care of 16 people, clients checking in and out in the peak of holiday season. It created a lot of intensity in that front desk position. And it made me realize why I may have experienced a little bit more turnover at that front desk than I was hoping for over the last 4 or 5 years. I don't know that I was staffing it appropriately. So now my rule of thumb is that for every 8 stylists, I have one desk person. That way I'm being intentional around staffing, so I'm not just always staffing 2 people, even on a quiet day. But when there's 16 stylists there, I've got 2 people running that front desk because I know it's a busy job. Now, I'm not saying that's the magic number, but what is your magic number? What does your team need for support? Come up with some guidelines for yourself around service provider to front desk ratio so that you can set yourself up for success. You don't overstaff and you don't understaff. Now, that being said, it's not lost on me that paying for that additional labor, if that's an opportunity of yours, is something that's easy to do. We know already is that labor is one of the highest expenses when we look at all of the core areas where our money goes. On the dollar, about 58 cents of that dollar goes to labor. 17 cents operating expenses, and you've got products. 7 cents goes to rent, but really the core of it is labor. And so again, I don't take it lightly when I say, oh, consider staffing more. But the thing to consider is that there are several factors in creating sustainability in your business. So if we want to spend more on labor, we have to look at how that spreads across to the other profit drivers in our business, like operating expenses, space, products, and of course, revenue. If we increase our revenue, it creates more opportunity for staffing. Now, this is a long game. And it was for me too. Granted, I turned it around quickly because of the urgency of that day that I worked the front desk. But what I identified that is that if I was going to spend more money on my front desk, my non-service labor, then I was going to have to drive revenue to support that investment. And that's really where we come to this last gap that I had identified, which was missed opportunities. One of the things that I realized as I was running around with my hair on fire that day was that there was a lot of things that were supposed to be happening or kind of slipping through the cracks because that accountability factor wasn't there because the front desk was spread so thin, both because of staffing and because of bad systems. One of the things that we know is that typically only about 29% of new clients are going to come back. So 71% of new clients won't return for a second visit. We also know that 71% of clients aren't even offered a product, and that 71% of salon hours go unsold. And when I say salon hours going unsold, I'm not talking about what percentage of your stylist schedule is booked. I'm not talking about white space on the books. I'm talking about empty chairs during regular hours of operation. So when we think about these things, some people look at them as bad news, right? They think of it as only 29% of all of these things are happening. I really want to challenge you to think about it the other way, which is that 71% more opportunity is just sitting on the table ready for you to take on. And so how can your front desk systems and your front desk team members really contribute to closing some of these gaps around opportunities that are left on the table? Now, one of our core methodologies for driving revenue at Qnity is called 2-number growth. And it's called 2-number growth because we're focused on 2 primary KPIs: client count and average ticket. Those are the most essential metrics to focus on because when we take our client count and we multiply it by our average ticket, it equals our total sales, the top line that matters most, and especially as it relates to supporting our front desk staffing and our bottom line and healthy salon profitability. So when we look at how we drive growth in client count and average ticket, what shows up are something we call the Qnity drivers. Now, Qnity drivers are essentially areas we can focus on to create growth in these key areas. And what you'll start to identify as I go through them is that there are also opportunities for your non-service team to support. So what types of things are going to grow client count? Well, if we were to bucket them into 3 core categories, it would be referrals or driving new clients. It would be retention, meaning your customer has a great experience and they come back for another one. Then we have rebooking. Now, rebooking does support retention, but it's listed here separately because when we are rebooking, we can increase the frequency of visit, which means that one customer will come more times in 1 year, ultimately increasing the total client count. As it relates to average ticket, we've got 3 key areas we can focus on. Products, because we're talking about total average ticket, add-ons, and of course, how we set our pricing. So I want you to just take this in for a moment. Look at the visual on the screen and think about what you've got in place at your front desk. Does the front desk protocol that you have in place now support driving growth in client count and average ticket by focusing on these key areas? Are there behaviors that are or expectations put in place for our front desk team that will help support growth here? If not, let's start to get creative and think about how we can go from knowing to doing to help get our business growing so that we can have healthier profitability and sustainability and a smoother day. I'll share with you some things that I saw and how we approach them, going through each one of these drivers. Starting with rebooking. Now, at my salon, and especially on that day, if it gets busy, our stylists are trained to be able to check out their own clients if they need to. Now, what I saw during checkout, or what I heard during checkout many times, was this. So, do you want to book your next appointment or do you just want to call? What do you think the answer was when that was the question that was being asked? I'll tell you what, about half of the time it was, I'll just call. I'll just call. Now here's the thing. I was a stylist. I know what works and doesn't work. This phrasing doesn't work. What does work is this. Let's get you scheduled for your next visit. Your stylist recommends 8 weeks to maintain the shape or the color or the tone, whatever it is about that specific service. We want to tie it to the why, and we really want to present this as telling versus asking. So if there's one thing that you can take away from this and go straight to your front desk, it's a simple verbiage shift. As it relates to rebooking, we tell instead of ask. The worst they can say is no. I guarantee you if you start approaching this through this lens of tell versus ask, you're going to see a higher percentage of your clients rebooking. Now, next was products and rebooking because this supported both. I noticed that the product conversation was not happening at the front desk, or if it was happening at all, it was, do you want any products? Do you need anything? It wasn't connected back to their experience. So after my time behind the front desk, I decided I needed to systemize this. So this is something where I did add another operational element, but it made a huge impact. So now my stylists at their stations, they have these simple little cards. We call them customized care cards. And all they have to do is identify what the hair care focus was and write down the recommended products. They also have an opportunity to write what they recommend for their maintenance routine. This gets handed off to the front desk person. The front desk person can make a recommendation that ties back to exactly what their stylist said, so the dialogue sounds more like, oh, it looks like Jacqueline used the leave-in, the volumizing foam, and the stronghold hairspray on you. Would you like to take any of those home today? Oh, it looks like Jacqueline recommends you return for your next haircut in 8 weeks. Let's get that scheduled for you. So now the pieces of the puzzle start fitting together a lot smoother. So before, as it related to, our rebooking, I was saying tell. With add-ons, we want to ask, okay? So we started incorporating an ask element into our call center. So every time somebody calls to book an appointment, our phone person, her name's Jamie, asks if they want an add-on. Now, they don't say it like that. They say, oh, okay, I've got you scheduled for a haircut. Would you like to book a treatment with that? Now, this might seem simple, but the shift that we saw was dramatic. We also made sure that this showed up on our online booking platform so that it was offering the right add-ons for the service that the base service that was being booked. Here's another opportunity I saw. I got in here and I looked around on my online platform and realized that some of these services were set up incorrectly. So again, it's about doing an operations audit because you might not realize what's kind of fallen between the cracks. So ultimately, between the product card and asking about add-ons every single time, we were able to make a significant impact on our average ticket. Now, I just pulled these numbers this morning because I wanted the whole month to finish. In January 2025, our average ticket was $115. In January of 2026, our average ticket was $155. So by putting those simple systems into place, we were able to increase our average ticket by 35%. So this is really about intent and about auditing and then being intentional about what comes next. Now I'm going to go back to this for just a moment. I want to go back to our drivers. And go ahead and open up your chat. When you look at the things on this screen, these 6 drivers, what's something that you could do differently at your front desk to drive different results? Go ahead and put it in the chat. What's just one small thing? I had shared with you asking the person who answers my phone to suggest or offer a treatment. That alone helped. Yep, okay, Sherry, have them ask about add-ons. Now look, this might seem simple, but simple is the goal. Okay, we want simple because simple is effective, and then effective is going to drive results, of course. Anybody else have something that they can think of related to increasing retention, rebooking, referrals? Ask about add-ons during booking. Yeah. So we really, when we look at the opportunities, this is going to lie in training our front desk team members to really start to think about these drivers and how they can impact them. My front desk was just trying to keep their head above water. I had so many unnecessary things happening within their shifts that they didn't really have the mental bandwidth to consider these things. And this is where the juice is really worth the squeeze. So that's your call to action, is where can I do things differently? How can I create simplicity where there might need to be some? And how can I be strategic and intentional about driving revenue where there's those 71% opportunities? So with that, that's your call to action. Find the opportunity, set yourself and your team up for success. Now, time flies. We're already at 45 minutes past the hour. If there's any questions or any ideas that anybody has, please go ahead and put it in the chat. I'll be on for a while. I also want to just remind you, I'm going to catch my slides up here, that upcoming, because this is the first of a series of our strategy series webinars, we have our next session, which is going to be on Monday, March 2nd at 2 p.m. Central. And what we're going to be focused on during that time together is one of my favorite Qnity things called a 17% growth challenge. Now, I'm going to talk about how to set your team up to really track, target, and drive 17% individual growth over a period of 13 weeks, aka quarter 2. This is a national 17% growth challenge. So here in this webinar, you're going to learn all about the challenge and how you can engage in it because it kicks off in April. We're also going to give you some tips and tricks about how you can use Qnity tools to really inspire and motivate your team to grow their individual sales. So Save the date, put this one on your calendar. It's going to be a good one, and it's going to be the start of a very, very exciting quarter two. So I'm going to check the chat here, see if there's any questions or comments. Looks like nothing new. So with that, I want to say thank you to everybody for joining today. I hope you got something out of my share, and I challenge you to spend a day behind your front desk. I know we're all busy, we got lots of things to do, but give it a try. You might be surprised what you find out. Have a great week, everyone.